Al, it's time to talk about one of our favorite weird video game accessories,
Mm-hmm.
the Satellaview.
Since I love you.
And also some other games that are associated with what we're talking about.
Yeah, but mostly Satellaview. Actually, it's
Satellaview.
not mostly Satellaview, but
It really isn't, but it's also, it just gives us an opportunity to talk about the Satellaview.
and I mean this has been a significant part of the Satellaview history, and I mean I guess the larger Nintendo history. So it's kind of a nice little bit we're gonna have here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Seasonal Anime Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by Doc Al and Ladium.
Hello.
This is episode number 279, and we're going to talk about Chrono Cross and also Radical Dreamers.
Or Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers edition.
Yeah, call whatever you want.
Well, that just encompasses everything.
Yeah, that's the re-release that just recently came out for all consoles that are out there, basically.
We'll talk about that. Oof.
Yes. But we're going to do this, I guess, in
Chronological order.
Yes. I was trying to think of the word, but obviously that's, baked into the series here.
Yep.
Chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about Radical Dreamers first, and then we'll dive into Chrono Cross, the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
You played through both of these.
Sure did.
The re-release and obviously Radical Dreamers. I have not played through either of these, so you're going to be talking a lot about these games.
You're going to participate.
I'm going to provide background information for these games while you tell us about the actual games themselves.
Okay, and also just for clarification, I did not get all the endings because I ain't got time for that.
I mean, we have all the endings, I think, here on Wikipedia, so
Yeah. So I got
we can kind of talk about those there.
I got the true ending for Radical Dreamers, and I think the true ending for Chrono Cross.
Gotcha.
Or the canonical ones, I guess is the way.
Right. So yeah, Radical Dreamers was first. It was basically done after Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a little spin-off for it, essentially. It was released on... trying to find it again. There it is. February 3rd of 1996, and then there were subsequent broadcasts afterwards through March 8th of 1996 on the Satellaview, which if you are unaware of the Satellaview, it was an add-on for the Super Famicom that allowed you to get satellite broadcast of games or shows or whatever you wanted or whatever they decided to broadcast on that. Mm-hmm. Some stuff on there that was exclusive to it because obviously they weren't putting these things out on hardware itself. So a lot of this stuff is kind of lost to time unless they do the work to bring it back out like they did with this re-release of Chrono Cross. So this had not been playable in English ever before and basically had not been playable legally since 1996.
Yeah, and also worth noting, this came out a year almost to the date after Chrono Trigger, which is wild.
Correct. We'll get into that and how that may have affected some things.
Ho-ho!
So let's talk about development of Radical Dreamers here real quick.
Okay.
It was developed by Square, obviously, the company which had previously developed Chrono Trigger. Masato Kato, who was the director of Chrono Trigger, wrote Radical Dreamers after Chrono Trigger's release, feeling that Trigger concluded with unfinished business. He composed the main story and drafted the concepts for the sub-scenarios, leaving them to be completed by his peers. He allowed Makoto Shimamoto to write the entire Kid in the Sunflower segment, later joking that he avoided having any part in that episode, while Miwa Shoda was in charge of the Shadow Realm and the Goddess of Death segment. According to scenario writer Daisuke Fukugawa, responsible for the game's the enigmatic Giga Weapon Paradise X subplot, the game's graphical content pushed the Satellaview's technical limits, requiring developers to redraw pre-rendered models until functional gameplay could be ensured, which is weird because essentially this is just a visual novel.
Yeah.
Compared to Chrono Trigger, the plot of Radical Dreamers has a bleak tone, which Kato ascribed to his deep frustration and anger about coming to work every day following Chrono Trigger's hectic development.
I mean, that's fair.
Specifically, Kid's nihilistic feelings were Kato's own expressions at the time. Kato intended both Dreamers and his eventual successor Chrono Cross to prompt players to pursue their personal dreams in life. Due to being a small side project, there was a general sense of freedom compared to other Square titles. The decision to make it a text-based adventure helped push the game into its darker direction. Kato intended for it to be a survival adventure title, but abandoned this specific approach after the release of Resident Evil.
What?
The more comedic additional scenarios help balance out the somber elements in the main narrative. Reflecting on his work, Kato felt his work on Radical Dreamers helped solidify his style. Bleh. Kato's team completed Radical Dreamers in only 3 months under a rushed production schedule, prompting him to label the game unfinished in an interview for Ultimania Chrono Cross Guide. Square had initially requested it to be finished in 2 months. Kato regretted that the schedule hampered the quality of his work and explained that the connections to Chrono Trigger were revoked towards the end of the project. So that sounds like it was a huge mess.
Yeah. Well, and Kato was initially like very against this being released again.
Yes, there's some stuff here.
Oh, okay, you have that.
Yeah, Square originally wanted to include the game as part of the PlayStation port of Chrono Trigger, but Kato stopped them due to his dissatisfaction with the final product. And while he had the option of incorporating it into the Nintendo DS remake of Chrono Trigger, he did not due to his very different tone and questionable market demand. While uncertain about its quality in the gaming market at the time, which is just bad writing,
Yep.
Kato was open to possibly releasing a version of Radical Dreamers. And then I guess later in like 2009, after the Chrono Trigger DS remake came out, he expressed concern over re-releasing it, as he cited he needed to revise the work as is, essentially. But then it just came out, I guess, with this, and I don't know if anyone said, hey, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I wonder if they like got his input, or if he got to change anything, or if this is just their like, hey. He's like, oh, cool, I guess. Thanks. I don't know. I would like to know.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people have like, they interviewed him like a few decades ago, like in the 2000s, and they're like, I don't know if they really had anyone talk to him with this coming out,
right?
Or if really he has anything to do with it, because he's freelance now, so it's not like he's working with Square,
right?
So yeah, interesting. Let's see here. Let's talk a little bit about music real quick.
Yeah, that was an interesting little section I just read.
The music of Radical Dreamers was written by composer Yasunori Mitsuda, who scored Chrono Trigger and later Chrono Cross. During this time, Mitsuda was listening to Russian folk music and used the style in the music for Radical Dreamers. He wrote the score in a very relaxed style, which he felt produced his best work at the time. Mitsuda wrote the music in around 3 months, and in retrospect thought it turned out well. Several themes and musical patterns were later adapted for Chrono Cross at Kato's suggestion. Many appear unchanged except for new instrumentation. Mitsuda estimated that about half the music for Radical Dreamers was reused in Chrono Cross.
Confirmed, yes.
Which is interesting. I like how he's like, oh yeah, we got this done in 3 months. I'm okay with it. And like the other parts of the development team are just like,
just everything's on fire, freaking out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. He's like, oh yes, my Russian folk music. This is fine. Wild.
I'm just having a good time. While everything else is on fire.
Yep. Yay!
So yeah, a weird thing, obviously, like, I mean, things that came out, I think, for the Satellaview were most notably weird things.
Yes.
But this definitely feels like a very weird thing, because it is a side story to Chrono Trigger, a game that was very late in the Super Nintendo's life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obviously coming out in 1996, when the next generation of consoles are already out.
Right.
So it's like one of the things, like, are people really going to pay attention to this? Especially because it's not a JRPG like Chrono Trigger was. It's a visual novel, essentially.
Right.
So you have that going for you, and it's on this weird satellite thing. And then, obviously, it never comes out elsewhere, except, like, there are English fan translations of it, but that's it until now recently. So it is very interesting to see, like, how people are going to react to this in general, considering, the director's like, I wish I could redo this, essentially, and seemingly did not get a chance to redo it. They just put I mean, obviously the cool thing is they put the Satellaview version in here, which I would be happier with if they did that and not just like redo it and not put that in there.
Right. Yes, I agree.
But also it's weird that they're like they have multiple instances of the creator being like, yeah, I wish I could like go back and fix some stuff in this, and then they just like, we're just gonna throw this in here, whatever.
Yep.
But you played through some of this at least. You didn't play through, I guess, all the endings as you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who's played through Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, and you played through this afterwards,
mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts and all that on this?
Okay, so I am not a stranger to text-based things at all.
Right.
So it very much plays like an old text-based adventure game. Like, you see this thing. Okay, well, we're gonna turn left down this hall type kind of stuff.
Right.
The bizarre thing about this, there are a few bizarre things about this, but one of the bizarre things about this is that it has random encounters. Like, it has random battles that just show up, and you're like, oh, cool, I was just walking down the hall and now I'm battling some like goblins or something, wall goblins, which I would not have expected, but I guess they're just like trying to tie it back into how Chrono Trigger was a JRPG with random encounters.
Right.
So that felt odd. But it's fine, I guess. I finally figured out like the patterns on how to attack them. And once you know the patterns on the enemies, like you can literally just kill them without taking any damage whatsoever, which is another thing, is that you play a Surge who is a different Surge than the Surge that we know, because this is Surge who is a musician and kind of looks like a member of the KKK. I sent you that and I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yikes. With like big belt loop things. It's very bizarre. But Surge, like the gameplay mechanic is that you have a hidden HP meter and you have a hidden affection meter for Kid. And those two things, like obviously if you lose HP, you die. But the affection meter influences like what kinds of endings you can get and all that fun stuff. So you have to make decisions that she likes. One of those is that like you are timed on these random battles. So like if somebody pops up, you have like a few seconds to make a decision on what you're going to do, or else like they're going to do something to you first, which scared me the first time it happened, because I was trying to figure out what do I do. And then it's like, what if I just try and eat you? I'm like, no. I'm making decisions. This is JRPG. Let me make decisions. Nope, this is not how this works. So yeah, that's a whole thing. But I played Chrono Cross first when I played this, and then I came back into Radical Dreamers, and I was like, oh hey, like one of the subplots very early on in Chrono Cross is just this in a different way. And it is confirmed in Cross that this is like an alternate timeline version of events. So that's also a thing. So you play a Surge, as I mentioned, he is a musician. Kid is a 16-year-old thief, and they are joined by Magil, who is Magus for some reason. Except for he has a mask on and just doesn't ever say anything ever. He will occasionally throw in an opinion, or except for one ending where it's very bizarre. But the story of this is basically like the infiltration of the Viper Manor. There's a guy named Lynx there that Kid is very angry with, and he killed like a group of like dragoons, and she wants the Frozen Flame. That's what it's called. She wants the Frozen Flame. All of this, except for the dragoon part, is in Chrono Cross. Every single bit of it, except for Surge is not a musician and Magus is not there. Well, depending on who you ask, Magus is not there. That is a big depending on who you ask. Which is a whole other thing, is that at one point they wanted Maggle to be Magus, which he is. That's confirmed. But then they thought about having Magus as Maggle in Chrono Cross. But then they like ran out of time to make his backstory work. So they're just like, this is just another random masked magician guy, and his name is Guile. And so like all the fans are like, well, this is Magus, and no, this is Guile. This is not Magus, obviously. It's strange.
Original character, do not steal.
Basically, yeah. They're like, we can't make this backstory work. New guy. So yeah. It's odd that it says that like he put in the Chrono Trigger references later or towards the end, because like the entire like true ending part of this ties directly into Trigger. So I'm not sure how that would have worked otherwise. Because like the Frozen Flame is a part of Lavos, the final boss in Chrono Trigger, and the dude who is a big bad in Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And Kid was raised by Luca from Chrono Trigger. Also, she died. Lynx killed her, so that's why Kid wants to murder him. But also, like, Lynx wants to fight her because she has the time egg, or also known as the Chrono Trigger, that she has to like trade for Surge's life at one point because he's useless in this anyway. So it's odd to me that they're like, yeah, that was kind of thrown in last minute. Like that's a big part of the story there that you guys just kind of like flung in, apparently.
To be fair, they had 3 months.
Okay, that is very, very fair. That is fair. But I will say that if you play Radical Dreamers first, which some people did, it spoils a lot of stuff from Cross. Like it spoils the fact that Kid has the time egg, and it spoils the fact that she was raised by Luca, and it spoils who the heck she is, because she's like not a reincarnation. She's a clone basically of Shala from Chrono Trigger. Like all of that is used in Cross, every single bit of that. So, well, and obviously Lynx and the Viper Manor and all is also, and the Frozen Flame. All of that is in Chrono Cross. Exactly. So like you could definitely see how it was the influence for Cross, and how he's like, yeah, this is an idea I had. Let me like make this into something bigger. Mm-hmm. Which I think would also tie into the whole idea of he's like, yeah, this is incomplete, or I'm not happy with it. And then he goes on to make Cross, which is expanding on all of these ideas. Well, some of these ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, like, they probably weren't thinking, like, oh, we're going to make a sequel to Chrono Trigger.
No, probably not.
Because obviously Chrono Cross doesn't come until, like, 99, 2000. So it's definitely a few years after this comes out. So they had time after that to really be like, okay, let's take what we made with this and expand upon it and really go full into it, instead of just making it this little small thing. Let's make it actually into a bigger, blown-up game.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you also get like Riddell's in here, which she's a character in Cross. Pretty significant character. She looks very different in this though, obviously, because the art is Satellaview. Which that is something that I was not expecting, is the way that the art looks. which I don't know what I was expecting. Honestly, I have no idea what I was expecting. But if you're walking down a hallway in the story, then you'll get like a small animated GIF basically of like Kid and Surge and Maggle like walking down a hallway. Um, you have some events like um when you go into Riddell's room, like all you see when you go in the room is a mirror, but then like once you start communicating with your characters, like you see their reflection in the mirror. So you see who you're playing, and then as I mentioned, like at the end when you're talking to Lynx, they're all like confronting him and you look like a clan member. There's also another moment where you're on like a weird trap thing and you can see all three of the characters, but
it's also different because like they didn't get Toriyama back to do the character designs and artwork.
That's an improvement
for this. Well, to some people it might be.
That's an improvement. A huge improvement.
But yeah, like that's obviously a big difference in terms of like how the art's gonna look, and like especially with like the characters and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you do get some descriptions of them, and like the funniest thing is that Kid's basically like a manic pixie dream girl at the beginning, which is great. It's like, she's the most lovely thing you've ever seen. I like fall into her eyes. Also, she's just a punk ass kid. It's like, okay, great. So, yeah, it's definitely a moment of like men writing women that was, also, she was like 16, so like, ooh, yikes. Which I guess that's a good segue into there are some things in this game that did not age well. Like the one ending where Magus, whatever you want to call him, basically turns into like weird, I don't want to be friend zone bullshit and like steals a lady, just steals her, and like everybody at Viper Manor is like cheering him on as he's stealing her away. He literally throws her over his shoulder and runs off with her, and they're like, yay. And he gets mad at one point, legitimately mad, because she's like, yeah, you should come back during the day as a friend. And he just like loses his shit at the word friend. I'm like, oh my god. Magus was a very good character in Chrono Trigger, and you guys are turning him into one of these dudes. This is the worst. So yeah. How long did this take me to get through? I did finally figure out I could save. That was nice. That helped me a lot.
Like a couple hours.
I think it took me like 2 hours-ish. It was pretty quick to get one ending, and I was not getting the rest of the endings. I'm sorry, children. There's no way I was going to do that. But there are several endings, and I think most of them are just like quote unquote funny endings.
Just weird stuff that they decided to throw in there.
Yeah.
To kind of like offset the darker tones of the main plot.
Yeah. I do like that there is a critter called Lesser Martian Bunny Bun Bun. That's a good name.
Yep.
So yeah, it has a lot more of like very direct reference. Well, I don't know. I can't necessarily say that because there are a lot of direct references to Chrono Cross and Chrono Cross, but you can see where the origins of Cross are coming from here and how they're already starting to make those ties. It's just funny how some of them ended up working out, like the whole Magus thing becoming Guile, because they're just like, yeah, we can't make this work. All right, we already designed him. Crap. Guile, you're a different guy. You're a masked magician. It's fine. It's fine. You're Guile now. So yeah, it was neat that I could play this. I don't know that I would play it again. No, I can confirm I would not play it again. But it was cool to be able to play it.
Yeah, like it's a cool bit of history that, hadn't been out there officially and now is, which is always something that's neat to see.
Yes. I agree. Which I guess then we can move into Cross a little bit. So this was 99. Do we need to go into development on this now?
Yeah, we can do that. So yeah, Chrono Cross obviously came out, like you said, a little bit after Radical Dreamers came out. This was out on the PlayStation 1 in Japan on November 18th, 1999, and then in North America on August 15th, 2000. And obviously now a part of the Radical Dreamers edition for PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One that came out on April 7th, 2022, so 22 years after the initial release of the PlayStation 1 version.
Wild.
Very wild. So yeah, let's talk about development of Chrono Cross itself.
Okay.
Square began planning Chrono Cross immediately after the release of Xenogears in 1998, which itself was originally conceived as a sequel to the Super Nintendo game. Chrono Trigger's scenario director Masato Kato had brainstormed ideas for a sequel as early as 1996 following the release of Radical Dreamers. Square's managers selected a team, appointed Hiromichi Tanaka producer, and asked Kato to direct and develop a new Chrono game in the spirit of Radical Dreamers. Kato thought Dreamers was released in a half-finished state and wanted to continue the story of the character Kid. Kato and Tanaka decided to produce an indirect sequel. They acknowledged that Square would soon re-release Chrono Trigger as part of Final Fantasy Chronicles, which would give players a chance to catch up on the story of Trigger before playing Cross. Kato thought that using a different setting and cast for Chrono Cross would allow players unfamiliar with Chrono Trigger to play Cross without becoming confused. The Chrono Cross team decided against integrating heavy use of time travel into the game, as they thought it would be rehashing and cranking up the volume of the last game. Masato Kato cited the belief that there's no use in making something similar to before, and noted, "We're not so weak nor cheap as to try to make something exactly the same as Trigger. Accordingly, Chrono Cross is not Chrono Trigger 2. It doesn't simply follow on from Trigger, but it's another different Chrono that interlaces with Trigger." Kato and Tanaka further explained their intentions after the game's released. This is from Kato himself. "We didn't want to directly extend Chrono Trigger into a sequel, but create a new Chrono with links to the original. Yes, the platform changed, and yes, there were parts that changed dramatically from the previous work, but in my view, the whole point in making Chrono Cross was to make a new Chrono with the best available skills and technology of today. I never had any intentions of just taking the system from Trigger and moving it onto the PlayStation console. That's why I believe that Cross is Cross and not Trigger 2. And then Tanaka said, when creating a series, one method is to carry over a basic system, improving upon it as the series progresses, but our stance has been to create a completely new and different world from the ground up and to restructure the former style. Therefore, Chrono Cross is not a sequel to Chrono Trigger. Had it been, it would have been called Chrono Trigger 2. Our main objective for Chrono Cross was to share a little bit of the Chrono Trigger worldview while creating a completely different game as a means of providing new entertainment to the player. This is mainly due to the transition in platform generation from the Super Nintendo to the PlayStation. The method I mentioned above about improving upon a basic system has inefficiencies, in that it's impossible to maximize the console's performance as the console continues to make improvements in leaps and bounds. Although essentially an RPG at its core, it is a computer game, and I believe that games should be expressed with a close connection to the console's performance. Therefore, in regards to development, our goal has always been to express the game utilizing the maximum performance of the console at the time. I strongly believe that anything created in this way will continue to be innovative." Full production. Are you going to say something? Sorry.
I was going to say, I have a note that I don't know how to remedy. I thought Xenogears was the original concept for Final Fantasy VII.
I don't know, maybe.
Not a sequel to Trigger. Anyway, I just had to bring that up because it's been bothering me since it was said. I'm like, wait a minute. Continue. Full production.
Full production began on Chrono Cross in mid-1998. The Chrono Cross team reached 80 members at its peak with an additional personnel of 10 to 20 cutscene artists and 100 quality assurance testers. The team felt pressure to live up to the work of Chrono Trigger's Dream Team development group, which included famous Japanese manga artist Akira Toriyama. Kato and Tanaka hired Nobutaro Yuki for character design and Yasuyuki Hane for art direction and concept art. The event team originally envisioned a short game and planned a system by which players would befriend any person in a town for alliance and battle. Developers brainstormed traits and archetypes during the character creation process, originally planning 64 characters with unique endings that could vary in 3 different ways per character.
Ugh.
Kato described the character creation process. Take Pierre, for example. We started off by saying we wanted a wacko fake hero like Tata from Trigger. We also said things like we need at least one powerful mom. No way we're going to go without a twisted brat, and so on and so forth. As production continued, the length of cross increased, leading to the event team to reduce the number of characters to 45 and scrap most of the alternate endings. Developers humorously named the character Pip Sumaru in Japanese, which means packed, as a pun on their attempts to pack as much content into the game as possible. To avoid the burden of writing unique accent and dialogue for several characters, team member Kiyoshi Yoshii coded a system that produces accents by modifying basic text for certain characters. Art director Nobuteru Yuki initially wanted the characters to appear in a more chibi format with diminutive proportions. The game's world's fusion of high technology and ethnic tribal atmospheres proved challenging at first. He later recalls striving to harmonize the time period level of technology, especially as reflected in the character's garb. Let's see here. Masato Kato directed and wrote the main story, leaving subplots and minor characters' events to other staff. The event team sometimes struggled to mesh their work on the plot due to the complexity of the parallel worlds concept. Masato Kato confirmed that Cross featured a central theme of parallel worlds, as well as the fate of Shala, which he was previously unable to expand upon in Chrono Trigger. Concerning the ending sequences showing kids searching for someone in a modern city, he hoped to make players realize that alternate futures and possibilities may exist in their own lives, and that this realization would not stop with the game. He later added, paraphrasing one novelist's favorite words, "What's important is not the message or theme, but how it is portrayed as a game." Even in Cross, it was intentionally made so that the most important question was left unanswered. Kato described the finished story as old boy meets girl type story with sometimes shocking twists. Kato rode his motorcycle to relieve the stress of the game's release schedule. Vroom vroom.
Wait, what's the most important question that was left unanswered?
That's for you to figure out.
Oh God, okay, anyway.
He continued refining event data during the final stages of development while the rest of the team undertook debugging and quality control work. Square advertised the game by releasing a short demo of the first chapter with purchases of Legend of Mana. The North American version of Cross required 3 months of translation and 2 months of debugging before release. Richard Honeywood translated working with Kato to realize certain dialogue for ease of comprehension in English. He also added instances of wordplay and alliteration to compensate for difficult Japanese jokes. To streamline translation for all 45 playable characters, Honeywood created his own version of the accent generator, which needed to be more robust than the simple verbal tics of the Japanese cast. Although the trademark Chrono Cross was registered in the European Union, the game was not released in Europe.
Okay.
Yasunori Mitsuda was also brought back in to do the soundtrack for the game, and he made a bunch of music.
Yep, sure did.
He did make a lot of music.
Well, we're not doing Russian anymore. We're Mediterranean, Celtic. I forgot how you pronounce that. Celtic, and percussive African music.
You know, just the whole gambit.
This man's wildin'.
He's wildin'. Let's talk about release and the reception of this game.
Okay.
They shipped 850,000 units in Japan and sold 650,000 abroad by 2003. It was re-released as a greatest hits title on the PlayStation. It also got re-released on PSN in July 6, 2011 in Japan and November 8, 2011 in North America. They did not put it out in the PAL regions, I guess, because they didn't put out a PAL region version of it in the first place.
Right.
It definitely has a high Metacritic score of 94 out of 100. Wow. It is infinitely controversial because it was like a very early GameSpot 10 out of 10 in the time when they were not giving out 10 out of 10s willy-nilly.
Right.
I think the thing about that was that, like, they gave that game to not like one of the regulars on their staff, and the person reviewed it and gave it a 10 out of 10, and like they were like, all right, do you think this is a 10 out of 10? They're like, yep, sure do. And they're like, all right, here you go. Everyone's just like, huh? What? Excuse me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fan reaction was largely positive, though certain fans complained that the game was a far departure from its predecessor, Chrono Trigger. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They obviously are making that well known that this is not Chrono Trigger 2.
Yep.
Let's see here. Kato later acknowledged that he could have shown more empathy to the player by making the story less complex, and acknowledged fans who felt the game was a departure from Chrono Trigger, noting that one can still equally enjoy the game. Then obviously they put out this remaster, which includes Radical Dreamers. They also did some work to it, and then added some of the bonus features that are in the Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 remakes, or remasters, I should say, that they've put out on various consoles. And let's talk a little bit about sequel.
Okay.
That's on here. In 2001, Hironobu Sakaguchi revealed the company staff wanted to develop a new game and were discussing script ideas. Although Kato was interested in a new title, the project had not been greenlighted. Square then registered a trademark for Chrono Break worldwide, causing speculation concerning a new sequel. Nothing materialized, and the trademark was dropped in the United States on November 13, 2003, though it still stands in Japan and the European Union. Kato later returned to Square Enix as a freelancer to work on Children of Mana and Dawn of Mana. Mitsuda also expressed interest in scoring a new Chrono series game. In 2005, Kato and Mitsuda teamed up to do a game called Deep Labyrinth, and again in 2008 for Sands of Destruction, both for the Nintendo DS. The February 2008 issue of Game Informer ranked the Chrono series 8th among the top 10 sequels in demand, naming the game's steadfast legacies in the Square Enix catalog and asking, what's the holdup? In Electronic Gaming Monthly's June 2008 retro issue, writer Jeremy Parrish cited Chrono as the franchise video game fans would be most thrilled to see a sequel to. In the May 1st, 2009 issue of Famitsu, Chrono Trigger placed 14th out of 50 in a vote of most wanted sequels by the magazine's readers. Note that's Chrono Trigger, not Chrono Cross.
Correct.
At E3 2009, Square Enix Senior Vice President Shinji Hashimoto remarked, if people want a sequel, they should buy more. Which is a very Square Enix response to that.
Yep, sure is.
And I guess we should note that, there's been no sequel to either of these games.
Mm-mm. No, people have been asking for Break for ages now.
For 2 decades.
I don't think Break is going to happen, kids.
No.
Unless, for some reason, people buy a ton of Chrono Cross and they're like, oh. But even then, Square is going to look at, a ton of sales and be like,
what if we just make Chrono NFTs instead?
It didn't sell enough. What if we just make another $12,000 figure?
Yeah, I mean, Square Enix obviously is very notorious, as we've mentioned here on this show a few times, about, what they think games should sell in terms of those numbers, and usually they're just way off the mark in terms of what normal companies would look at and be like, this is a success, or no, this is not a success. So that's gonna be a thing. I don't think putting out a Chrono Cross remaster is going to really push the needle in that direction even further to them to make a new Chrono game.
No,
especially because it's been over 20 years since Chrono Cross came out. I mean, if you could get probably Kato and Mitsuda back, I'm sure they would come back and do another Chrono game. But even at the same time, what does a new Chrono game even look like in 20?
That's a good question.
In the 21st century, in the 2020s.
That is a very good question. I don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And like I said earlier, I don't think this remaster of Chrono Cross is really going to push that needle into making a new one of these games because
no.
It's not Chrono Trigger.
Correct.
And it's Chrono Cross, which is a more divisive game than Chrono Trigger is.
That's something that I'm shocked by, is that all the reviews are so high for this, because I mean, I've been a person on the internet for many, many years. And I have not seen as much positive reaction to Cross as that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was kind of surprising to me.
I think it's always been more of a critical game that's people have been into, especially back in the day they were.
Uh-huh.
I think as the years have gone on, people have become more critical of it.
That's fair.
And the fan backlash I think against it has become kind of more vocal towards it.
Okay, well now I'm gonna sound like an when I talk about this game.
I mean, to be fair, that's just how we are.
Yeah. On a note that has nothing to do with Chrono Cross as a game in and of itself, this remaster runs it runs like absolute dog. It is awful, and I don't understand.
You played it on Switch, right?
I played it on Switch,
mm-hmm.
Which that's probably my bad.
I mean, to be fair, it's not like this is going to be pushing the Switch hardware.
It's a 20-year-old game.
Yeah.
ugh, it runs like absolute garbage. I did not expect how bad it would run. But I mean, there's parts where like I was running across the screen, it was just like chugging. Like, oh God, guys, really?
Yeah, this is the thing here. It says while Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers Edition was received well by critics, it received a negative reaction from players in part due to how it performed as compared to its PlayStation 1 counterpart. Analysis showed that the remastered version had its frame rate dropping quite frequently and was unable to cross the threshold of 30 FPS. This issue has been noted across all the platforms it was released on.
Okay, so it wasn't just the Switch.
No, this is how they made this remaster problem.
Ooh, okay, wow. To its credit though, with this remaster, I hate the battle system of Cross. I absolutely hate the battle system of Cross.
Now you played this game originally.
Yeah.
When it came out, were you someone who didn't like it back then, and you just still don't like it, or did you kind of tolerate it back then and now don't like it?
I mean, I still own the PS1 version of it.
Right.
I'm looking at it right now. And it's worth mentioning that like I was a massive fan of Trigger. I'm still a massive fan of Trigger.
I mean, I bought Chrono Trigger on the PlayStation 1 because it had those Akira Toriyama cutscenes in it. I mean, I was a Dragon Ball fan, so like I learned about this and I was like, oh, I have to buy this game now.
Oh, I know. I figured you would. But I loved Trigger, and I Trigger has so many good feelings for me. I think I can count. This might be my third time total playing through Cross, which says a lot because if they're JRPGs that I really like, I tend to play them like a lot. As you are very well aware, since I just like recently was like, what if I just play through Final Fantasy VIII again for funsies? Why not? But yeah, this is probably my third time playing through it. So I came away from this not super happy.
I mean, it's hard to go from Trigger, which was like a once in a lifetime kind of game where they combined literally Square and Enix together prior to them merging as a company together,
right?
And Akira Toriyama to make a JRPG that like no one was doing at the time. Like Square and Enix weren't working together in this facet before, and 4 to 5 years after the fact, like there's only remnants of that team now for Cross, which is going to make some sort of drop in quality, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and like I wholeheartedly think that Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest games that's ever been made. I will say that straight up. It is a very, very good game in terms of how it actually functions mechanically, like the not Toriyama art. The music of it's perfect. Like Chrono Trigger is such a well-crafted game in almost every aspect. So then you go into Cross and you're like, okay, cool. I feel like with the battle system, they try to do way too much. It can get confusing, and it's just like I there's only so much I want to have to do on a screen to make the character go bonk.
I love to make a character go bonk.
Yeah, like and you had like the really cool like tech system and Trigger. You have some of that here, but it's like one time use only for some stupid reason. So I just think there's a lot of like strange, questionable choices that were made with Cross. And even back then I was like, this is okay. But it definitely wasn't a mind-blowing game, and it definitely wasn't something I was like, holy moly, like
Yeah.
So
I mean, I was gonna say if you want, like, I feel like a good comparison to like the difference between Trigger and Cross, let's talk about producer Hiromichi Tanaka, who was the original producer for one game called Final Fantasy XIV before he got the boot because, oh man, that game was bad.
That was a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it probably didn't help as well that they were so, as we've seen through the quotes that they've talked about here, like they were so adamant about this not being Chrono Trigger that I think that probably hindered them in development, being like, we can't just make Chrono Trigger 2.
Right.
When kind of they are. And you can't get away from that.
I think that's the real problem here. And I think you really hit the nail on the head, is that they were trying so hard to not be Chrono Trigger 2. So they were just like going bananas with it. But at the same time, like they were relying heavily on Chrono Trigger for parts of the story.
Right.
That it's like, okay, so what are you actually trying to be here? I don't understand. And I came into this version of it thinking like, maybe if I play it now as like an adult, I'll have a different opinion on it than I did before.
Right.
And I might have come out of it having a worse opinion than I did before.
Well.
Yeah. And I hate saying that because like there are good parts about this game. I just think that it's kind of a hot mess. I mean, like, you have 45 characters. Only, like, maybe a handful of them actually get any kind of characterization.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of them just have their, like, accent generator, which is a wild thing, but that's how it functions. But, I mean, there's no reason to have 45 characters if you're only going to give a few of them any kind of actual personality.
Right.
And like there's so much stuff that they threw into the battle system. I just feel like they just threw so much at this game that they didn't really know what they wanted it to be. And it just comes across as messy. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it totally does.
And like a lot of the characters have cool designs, but like the designs don't really mean much if they say like 5 lines and then they're gone forever unless you put them in a battle for some reason. That you can like you have to play through it multiple times to even get all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can do playthroughs and like not even meet anybody. Like I didn't meet Guile in my gameplay this time. Woo!
He's too busy doing some sonic booms over somewhere else.
Good for him. Getting his flat top with his mask on. Not being Magus, of course. But I went with the rock star guy named Nikki because he's named after Nikki Sixx.
How many drugs is he doing though?
I mean, have you seen Nikki?
No.
Google Nikki from Chrono Cross for me. Nikki. I just need you to see Nikki. He fights with He fights with a guitar pick.
I mean, that's cool.
It is really cool. That's why I actually went with Nikki.
Oh boy. That's a look.
That's Nikki. So make of that what you will. The other options are, of course, Guile and
why did they just keep his name the same as it is in Japanese?
What is it in Japanese? I don't remember.
Slash.
Oh yeah, I mean, probably because well, I was gonna say probably because it was a reference to Trigger, but they kept Glenn in, so who knows? Slash would have made more sense though, especially because Slash is like more interesting than Nikki Sixx, but.
Especially in 1999 and 2000.
Right. Like, what was Nikki Sixx even doing in 2000?
I don't know. Motley Crue was probably doing something, or just a bunch of drugs.
Most likely, just a bunch of drugs.
Let's see if I can look up and see what he was doing in 1999 and 2000.
Oh man. And it also makes sense. Like Slash,
I had to look and see if he was alive or not.
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
He is.
Okay, good for him. I'm proud of him. But there's also like strange, while you're looking this up, I'm gonna talk about characters. Like one of there's strange recruitment decisions. Like one of the characters that you can get is Surge's like not girlfriend. And it's so unintuitive on how you get her, because you are like on a like cliffside with Kid at the beginning, and Kid's like, hey, I'm going to join your party. You have to say no repeatedly to Kid in terms of joining the party in order for your not girlfriend to join your party. And it's like, that seems so non-intuitive in an RPG for somebody to be like, hey, let me join your party, and you're just like, no, especially when this person's on the freaking box art.
Right.
What the heck? So like that's odd, and a lot of times just like, take this item to this person or whatever. There's a mermaid in here, that's kind of cool. Just like a voodoo doll with a big stake driven through his heart. There's one character who is a skeleton. His name is Skelly, and you can only get Skelly when you collect pieces of his bones back and put him back together. And then you get to return him to his grandma, which is kind of sad because, you know, he's a skeleton. I'm trying to remember if there are any other characters that are like wild. And I mean, there's a lot of characters in this. I don't remember how many characters I got.
Not all of them, obviously.
No, you can't get all of them in one playthrough. Another non-intuitive one is that I really want a Glenn because, you know, Trigger. Not the same Glenn, but it's clearly a reference. And there's a part in the game where like Kid gets poisoned, and the way for you to get Glenn is to refuse to save her, which once again, she's the girl on the box art, and you're just like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, what are these decisions? Who makes these decisions? Why are these the decisions that lead me to get characters? By being an I get good characters.
It's weird.
It's very weird. It's very, very weird. Did you find out what Nikki Sixx is doing in 2000?
Well, in 1999, Tommy Lee left the band, so they were struggling. Then they put out a new album in 2000 with one of Ozzy Osbourne's drummers. There's your Motley Crue update.
Wow, those are some decisions that happened there.
Yeah.
Oh. Man. I feel like this game has like two different, it feels like it's got a break in it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that it's a good break, because as we talked about earlier, like there are parallel worlds in this. There's the world where Surge died, and then there's the world where Surge did not die. And like, I guess the neat thing about that is that you can take some of the characters from the other worlds that are like, hey, let's go meet your other self in this world. Okay, sure, why not? So up to a point, it's like relatively normalish, like bouncing between the worlds, going on adventures, yay. And then there gets to a point where you like fight with Lynx. And it goes poorly, and he like steals Surge's body. And then you play like a significant portion of the game as Surge in Lynx's body, which is very weird. And Kid is just like gone and brainwashed against you. And you instead have Harl or Harley. I don't know how people usually pronounce her name. It's the same argument that people have with Marl from Trigger. Literally the same argument of is it Marl? Is it Marley? Is it Harl? Is it Harley? It's the same argument, just with a different front letter. I've always called her Harl, but then she becomes like your tag along friendo who's guiding you, and oh no, she's actually big dragon. Also, the dragons want to murder you. Also, there's like a supercomputer that is like Surge's dad and his friend Miguel, I think is his name. Surge got attacked by a poison panther at one point or something like that. And so they take Surge to the Dead Sea to try and get him healed from poison panther. And there's a supercomputer type thing there that like takes over his dad, but also like heals Surge, and Surge becomes the new Chrono Trigger. And you have to like fight Miguel at one point while like the three main trio from Chrono Trigger are there, but in their kid forms and also their ghosts. Like it kind of goes off the rails.
It seems like it.
And then there's like, oh, by the way, Kid was raised by Luca, which we got from Radical Dreamers. And Luca may or may not be dead. We're not sure. Unconfirmed. She's dead in the other one, but she's unconfirmed dead here. Probably dead. Also, Robo was like part of the computer thing, so Robo's dead. Also the what's his name? Gato, the singing robot from Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead. He dies. I know, right? You see him die in front of your eyes. I was trying to say face and eyes at the same time, and it became thighs. So yeah, it's kind of unclear on like who was dead and who is not dead, other than those people who are confirmed dead. But Kid is a clone of Shala. Even though Shala had blue hair, Kid has blonde hair. That's kind of unclear. Also, Kid is Australian for some inexplicable reason. Also, Harl might also be a clone of Char. It's not clear, but it's speculated. So you got little like clones running around, but she's also fused with Lavos for some reason. Like, it feels like they had a decent like build up to a point, and then they're just like, oh god, we have to shoehorn in a bunch of Trigger references. And they did, and it was a mess. That's really what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
Also, there are dragons who want to kill you. Let's put that in there. Why not? Also, Harl is one of them. Why not? Sure. Fine. But like the final boss you have to fight is like Lavos, and why am I blanking on her name? I've said it like a million times. Why am I blanking on her name?
Chrono.
No, that's a guy. Shala, is that her name? Shala?
Yes.
Yeah, Shala is like fused with Lavos, but she's also a kid for some reason, and she's blonde there too. Don't understand why. And that final boss is like one of the most annoying things I've ever had to experience, because you have to, the game has like elements, each character has elements that they're like inherently able to use. As one of the parts of the really crazy battle system. And there is a song you have to play by hitting Lavos with the elements in the correct order. But if he attacks you, he's going to attack you with the opposite element of what you're supposed to use, and you can only use these elements that you're using once. So like, as long as you have a stacked board, it's usually okay. But like, yikes, it's really annoying. That's the only way you can get the true ending.
Which doesn't sound like fun.
No, it's not. And so like the whole idea, which you kind of touched on this a little bit, is that like there are parallel worlds and different realities, and like the ending FMV is like a real live version of Kid looking for a real live version of Surge, which is technically you as the player, because she keeps telling him like I'll always find you, blah. But then there's like also a married version of her with Surge at one point, and the credits, I don't know. It's very confusing. I feel like I'm just kind of like barfing on this game right now. I don't know what else to say. Like I really was hoping that I would come into this with a better, like I was hoping I would come away with this with a better feeling than I did going into it. And like I said, I feel like I hate the game even more than I already did. And that's not to say that it's like a bad game per se, but it kind of is bad in ways. There is such thing as trying to do too much at once.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's what happened here. It's like, this is going to be a weird comparison. My mom used to make these beans, and sometimes my grandpa thought that he knew better and would just like randomly dump stuff in that definitely didn't go in beans. And then mom would turn around and be like, "Oh God, what happened to the beans? This isn't what I wanted." Like that's Chrono Cross. Somebody just added ingredients that don't go in the beans.
Chrono Cross, it's beans.
There you go, Square. You can use that. It's all yours, buddy. But yeah, like there are some neat references. I will say that. But yeah. Also, like at the very end, literally right before you take the portal to go fight the final boss, once again the Chrono trio as kids are just like chilling around the portal and just like absolute plot dump you with things that probably should have been in the actual story. Like explaining to you that like, so Lynx is Surge's dad, and like he was kind of like driven nuts by the supercomputer, but the supercomputer also like changed his appearance to be the thing that scared Surge the most, which is a panther. So like he's a humanoid panther type thing. And it's like, I feel like that maybe should have been put into the story as opposed to like Kid Chrono telling me that right before the final boss. Optionally. You don't even have to talk to him. You just keep going in the portal and like, okay, sure. Yeah.
Chrono Cross.
I guess the question here is at the end. It says the ambiguous ending leaves the events of the characters' lives following the game up to interpretations. Like, okay. There's also like 10,000 endings to this, much like Chrono Trigger had.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what they are.
Just like there could have been more.
Like I think one is that like Surge marries the girl from his hometown and like becomes a fisherman, which cool. This game would have been improved if it had a fishing mini game instead of that stupid compass game. Gambling. Like he comes from a fishing town. He lives on the water. How are you not letting me fish? What is wrong
They don't
with
like
you?
you.
They don't like me. Very obviously they don't like me. Which you can confirm that I was mad about the gambling game at one point, and I was texting you. I was just like, "This should just let me fish." I was so mad. I don't.
It's very true.
I don't gamble. I just want to fish.
I just want fish.
Just let me fish. There's water everywhere. Let me fish. Jerks. There's one that like kid becomes a general, I think. Like takes over a country. That might be the same one. There's one where Glenn's brother, who's actually not dead, even though they think he's dead, he decides he's gonna like open up Viper Manor to like orphans and raise them, and they're trying to figure out like, well, how do we get the money for this? So they open up like a host club basically and just like swindle people out of their money, and they end up taking a ton of money out of Lynx, who is in Surge's body at that point, which by the way, as a side note, they changed the art a little bit for this version of it, and for the most part it was better. But for the Lynx and Surge's body art, they basically just made him like stupidly evil looking. Like he even has like a skull on his hat or something. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? He looks stupid. Like, oh yes, I can definitely take you seriously as a villain when you have a stupid skull on your hat and like your little fang tooth.
That's what all villains look like.
Yeah, apparently. But I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, I was talking about the endings. Yeah, they start a host club. There are probably other endings. I don't remember what they are. Also, just as a worth mentioning note on this, the stupid censorship chuds came out about this game.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they got real mad about this game, like big mad.
Real dumb.
Because they seem to think that Square Enix has like a woke department, who removes anything that could like be offensive to women, which is not what happened here. There were some retranslation things that happened because they had a script that they fed into a generator of accents originally. And, amazingly enough, that doesn't always work.
Right.
So sometimes you gotta, I don't know, retranslate things. So they did that for minor lines, and people freaked out. Also, they took away a panty shot of a 9-year-old.
Yeah, and people got mad about that.
People got mad about that. So, just for the record, nobody except for that 9-year-old really needs to see their own panties. So, like, I don't need to see a 9-year-old's panties. She can keep that to herself.
Yep.
I am not upset by that.
Nope.
But I did feel like that was worth bringing up. The people are gross and people are terrible, and they should get punted to the moon.
What did the moon do to deserve that, though?
Where do you want me to punt them?
Just into space.
Okay. All right. Well,
They
then
can just sit out there.
I'll just punt them in. They go hang out with cars.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, you know what? Cars is even too good for them. Punt them in the opposite direction of cars. Don't even get to hang out with him. His fabulous hair. Anyway, I've gone off the rails. I'm sorry. Is there anything else I should mention about Chrono Cross?
I don't know.
No, either. I will reiterate the battle system's terrible.
Well, there you go.
I'm very glad that they gave the like God mode on here because it was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this. I think if this game did not have the God mode, I would have given up like way earlier because I just did not like it enough in general to suffer. And I don't know how I played it to begin with because it's like, oh God, this is a mess. You have to balance the elements that are one-time use, and you have to balance like getting weird like star I don't even remember what it's called. Basically like star stamina type things that like every action you take takes stamina, and like you have to build that up in order to actually do things, and your other characters have to do damage in order to build it up if you're like out of it or you defend. So there's just like a lot going on there. It's crazy pants.
Chrono Cross.
Yep. It's not Chrono Trigger 2.
It is not Chrono Trigger 2. You know, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Can't deny that.
So I think that that's really the takeaway here. This is not Chrono Trigger 2.
My other one takeaway is that I'm glad that they did the same thing they did with all the other Final Fantasy remasters, where they just kept the credits intact, so you get all that great Square Electronic Arts branding throughout those credits.
Ah, yes. But also, it looks like absolute hot garbage because it's still like the original resolution and everything. You're like, oh God.
That's what I'm here for.
But yeah, it had that. It had like the old credits with the FMV, and I was like, you know what, that was nice. I sent you a video of that.
You did?
So you could see all the old Square glory.
I did see all that Square glory.
And all that FMV kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. There is a new ending. You have to beat Cross. You have to beat Radical Dreamers. You have to sit through the credits on the main screen again. You cannot skip the credits. You have to watch through every single bit of the credits. Then there's a secret text only ending. I don't know what to make of it. Of course, like everybody seems to think like this is pointing to a new Chrono game, but I don't think that's what it is. It feels kind of like a Magus monologue type thing, and I don't even know that that's who's speaking. I have no idea.
It's me.
Jared, why did you get into Chrono Cross?
I just wanted to be a surprise.
You know, that's fair.
Because I was told it's not Chrono Trigger 2.
You're right. It's not Chrono Trigger 2.
Well, so I'm here to announce Chrono Trigger 2 coming soon.
Whoa! Whoa! Yeah, it was a very odd thing to like tuck that away in the credits after you beat the two games. Like, sure, I guess.
I mean, they give you a little something for getting the remaster, I guess.
Yeah, like I said, it's like all black background, white text. Just
there you go.
And I probably should like Google to see if anybody had come up with a better interpretation for it. But I read through it and I was like, all right. And then forgot literally every bit of it.
Well, there you go. I think that's that's all you need.
To forget every bit of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes me want to go play Trigger again. That's really all I want to do. You know what would have made Trigger an absolute perfect game?
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
Do you know what I'm gonna say?
I know what you're going to say, and no, you're wrong.
Why? Why am I wrong?
Because you're wrong.
I'm not wrong.
No, you're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong.
We're done with the podcast now. That's gonna do it for this week.
I got fired for the podcast.
You didn't get fired. We're just ending it. Before you can say things that you regret.
I would never regret saying that.
Regret.
I would never regret saying what I was thinking.
Saying factual lies.
Factual lies? Excuse you.
But yeah, that's Chrono Cross. That's Radical Dreamers. That's everything in between.
Yep.
And that's that remaster. It's weird.
Yep.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to do it for this week. If you'd like more from us, head on over to seasonalanimecheckup.com or sac.cool is where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Jared to Now Watch. You can also find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you'd like more from Anladium, go to anladium.com. She's got columns and reviews. You can follow us on Twitter and TikTok at Anime Checkup. You can buy our books, One Shiny Moment, A Critical Analysis of Love, Life, Sunshine, and Hot Tubs and Pac-Man on Amazon.com. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/SACOVA. Buy us a slice of pizza, get access to unedited versions of the podcast early, and a whole wealth of bonus content as well. Next week, the first episode of May.
Oh my God.
It's gonna be May.
It's gonna be May.
And we'll talk about something, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Figure it out.
Fishing would have made it better.